The third and final presidential debate is now history.
Last night's debate focused on foreign policy, but both President Obama and former Governor Romney got in some domestic issues as well. How did they do? Well, let's check in once again with the director of the Marquette Law School poll, Charles Franklin. Good to see you again, Charles.
Hello, stranger.
How did they do? How do you think they did?
I thought both probably mostly achieved what they wanted to for a foreign policy debate. The instant polls afterward showed Obama doing better by anything from a modest margin to a fairly significant margin. But I thought one thing that seemed to be Governor Romney's strategy was the idea that he wanted to talk about how he would be a comfortable foreign policy leader. He didn't really break new ground. He didn't take his proposals far away from what we are doing. His main critiques were frequently that he would have done things faster or more effectively. But so, for example, he didn't propose sending troops into Syria, for example. He said he would work with people in the region, of countries in the region, to bring pressure to bear. Well, that's more or less the U.S. policy now, but he was implying or saying that he would do it better than the Obama administration. And so in that, he didn't break any new ground on major policy issues and perhaps comforted voters that he wouldn't be too different. It's an irony that sometimes you want to match the other person's positions rather than break off into new ground.
I was going to mention that. It seemed that he agreed with a lot of Obama's policies, which is strange for somebody running against.
Yeah. And sort of ironic, because on the one hand, the Obama administration would like to argue that he has very different, scary foreign policies, but if he's agreeing with them, it's kind of hard to push back too hard on them. We did see a few things that were different, especially on China and whether China should be treated as a currency manipulator and what the implications of that might be. That came up late in the debate. But for the most part, I think we heard differences of emphasis rather than fundamental differences. If you compare it way back in the past when Ronald Reagan could say, I'm going to greatly increase defense spending and do these things, and Jimmy Carter was saying, no, I don't want to spend money on those things. There was a big difference in policy. Last night, I think we saw modest differences.
Well, the race could not be closer. And you've taken a look at some of the battleground contests that are beyond neck and neck.
Yes.
It's
looking ahead to the next 2 weeks as we get right up to Election Day, the national polling is showing Governor Romney with a slim lead, about 1% or 1.5% on average, but that's been moving a little bit. But when you look at the individual states, and especially those battleground states, some of them are awfully, awfully close. So as of this afternoon, Florida's at 1/10 of a point, Colorado's at a dead tie, Iowa at 0.2 of a point, Virginia at 0.4 of a point on average across all the polls. Those are pivotal states, and they're all well inside half a percentage point.
Is there anything either candidate can do to change that?
Sure. Campaign well and convince voters is what it fundamentally boils down to. If you look at how much shift we saw after the first debate in Romney's direction and how much shift we saw after the conventions in Obama's direction, those movements overwhelm these small 0.1 of a percentage point difference. The real issue is, are voters still learning things about the candidates? Might they still see an event or hear a statement or come to a conclusion that would shift them? We are getting to the point where most people have made up their minds, but there's still room in this last couple of weeks to see some movement.
All right. I can't
2
believe there's
weeks to
still
go.
undecided voters, but apparently there are.
Right.
Charles, thanks very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Charles.
you.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah.